Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Leadership Synergized, where we present individuals who have been there, done that, made a difference in many walks of life. And today I'm so honored to have our special guest, Coach Dave Worland, lifelong educator, lifelong leader, and more than that, has made such a significant difference in the lives of hundreds and thousands of individuals and earned the respect of individuals across all walks of life. Coach, God bless you, my friend. It's great to see you, and thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, Kevin. I love talking about education and athletics and leadership and synergy that all of your program has provided in the past. And we even get to throw in a little bit of faith. I always like to be able to talk about faith when we start talking about leadership and careers and life in general.
Coach, you certainly have had a strong life and much success, but more importantly, I think in many ways, opportunity to bring a lot of significance to many individuals from the student ages through the adult ages, on the court, off the court, and even in the boardrooms. And we're going to get into all of that. Coach, typically we take a moment and let our guests introduce themselves. And to walk into that piece, I just want to focus on the word coach, reference Coach Dave Worland. And when I think back, there's all kinds of degrees out there in the education world, from the bachelor's to the master's to the doctorate to the PhD, the EDD, et cetera. But when I stop and think about individuals who've meant more to me in my life, such as yourself, and you and I both have worked with a coaches association here in the state of Indiana called the Hoosier Basketball Coaches Association, and all those individuals, I'm not sure there's a greater honor that I have to be able to address someone and introduce them as coach.
Thank you, because I agree with you, only because I was brought up with coaches all over the place, because I grew up across the street from Lafayette Central Catholic High School, which is where I went to high school. But when I was a little kid, I used to hang out there. I was just a ball boy on their baseball teams. They probably wanted to run me out of the school some days on a Sunday when it was probably closed. And I went in there, took a basketball, and would shoot around. All of my mentors that I think about and the people that I emulated were all coaches. They're John Eberly, who was the first coach there at Lafayette Central Catholic. He practically brought me up. He just took care of me. He gave me opportunities to feel comfortable and growing. So I agree with you. Most of the people that I look up to in my life have been people that either coached me or coached my brothers or sisters, or they were in a school and they were coaches, but yet they were teachers and coaches. And I can't think of better people that I could associate with than people who are willing to dedicate their lives to coaching others.
Coach Dave Worland has had a ton of success in his life. And I also know that you've spent time in the classroom, but as an administrator, but more importantly, you're a family individual. Talk a little bit about Dave Worland, the family man, and then walk into your background in education, if you would.
Certainly. I grew up, like I said, in Lafayette, and I had 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. So there's 6 of us kids. Had a big family. Of course, we were spread out in age. I was the middle person. I had 2 younger sisters and 3 older brothers, but I was in a perfect spot to have a great life. My parents were fantastic. Was given a lot of opportunities to do things that maybe I didn't think I was going to be able to do or was capable of doing. To fast forward, I met my wife in Washington, Indiana, my first head basketball coaching job at Washington Catholic. We got married. We now have 3 beautiful children, and they have 2 grandchildren of ours, each one of them. So we have 6 grandkids. And life is good when you can blend children in with us as adults. And of course, when I was a young parent, it seemed a lot harder back then than it is being an older grandparent, because now it's just a lot of fun because the kids are older and we're on equal bearings on all being adults. So I've been very blessed to have a beautiful wife and wonderful kids and fantastic grandkids. So moving right into my career, and that was my first step. I always wanted to be an educator. I knew from the get-go I wanted to be a coach. That was my passion, because of what I hoped to do and wanted to do. So went to Purdue University after I got out of high school at Lafayette Central Catholic. Went on the fast track. I really didn't go there for social reasons. I was able to graduate in 3 years because I took some summers in between. It wasn't because of my academics. I was a very average academic student, but I wanted to get out of college so I could be a coach, because I coached during my college days and even high school days. I coached Little League baseball. I coached basketball at Lafayette Central Catholic when I was going to Purdue. So I just couldn't wait to get what I would have called a real job where I'd get to have my own teams and all that. So when I graduated from Purdue in 3 years, I was fortunate enough to get offered a job at Washington Catholic High School. And then from then on, I've been either coaching, teaching, or administrators at 3 different high schools throughout that realm.
And currently you work in Indianapolis, correct?
Correct. I'm in Indianapolis. I'm in my 23rd year at Cathedral High School here in Indianapolis. 20 of those years, I was the principal of the building. Did not coach here. I've never been a basketball coach or any coach here at Cathedral. But the last 3 years, I've been in advancement. So what I do is raise money. I got a fancy title. It's a VP of wonderful things, but it's a fancy name to go out and raise money for kids. And I love it because we're able to give kiddos that need financial aid to be able to get some finances for them, and also to help bolster our facilities. That it's 105 years old, our school. So we want to keep relevant and keep things strong and safe here.
Coach, you talked a moment ago and mentioned you've always wanted to be an educator. Take us back to that first moment you recognized that. Was it on the basketball court, in organized sports? Was it in the classroom when a teacher made a statement? Was it a pickup, summertime activity? But where were you and how did it come to you? That's me in the future.
It was, I can remember pretty vividly. Of course, when I was at St. Mary's Cathedral High School in Lafayette, Catholic school, K through 8, and Mrs. Wagner was our kind of a resource teacher. And so the sisters, the nuns that we had, the Franciscan sisters, were awesome, but they were educators. They wanted to make sure that you understood everything so you could move up to the next level. But Mrs. Wagner, who was one of my aides, she wasn't a sister, but she was an invaluable teacher. She'd take us aside and teach us things. And then she led us as even first grade papers. And I was fascinated. I loved that. We did a little penmanship class. So I was able to grade some of the other students' papers. And that's what turned me on to teaching, was I was able to grade papers. I was able to listen to Mrs. Wagner tell me how to be successful and how to get along in the classroom. So I knew from then on, I wanted to teach. I didn't know what I'd teach. I didn't know what I'd do. And coaching really wasn't in the thought pattern then until I was old enough in 5th grade to be on a basketball team at St. Mary's. And then I fell in love with coaching. I was an average to a little above average player, but I always wanted to teach people how to play and what to do. I had players that had more talent than I did. And I enjoyed working with them because I finally built up their confidence. I think that they believed in what I was telling them. Even if I was a junior high kid, they were able to see that some of it made sense. And that gave me the latitude to take all these gifts that people had given me. And the good Lord gave me the ability, I think, to transfer that to someone else. And I've never stopped for the last 55 years. That's what I've been doing.
That's a very good point. My perception is, and having done on a very small scale similar aspects and been associated with very successful coaches, and when I say that, I'm not talking about one-loss records, just great human beings, children of God and family men and women in that regard. And coach, it's not something that ever leaves you, right? Whether you're on the sidelines in uniform or not, it never leaves us or individuals like yourself. And a great example, I know you're spearheading and continuing a former coach's summer get together, the legends in that piece. You got one coming up that was started many years ago here in the state of Indiana, but it's just always there. It's always a part of who we are.
Yeah, it's like a fraternity of people who understand what that means. Because when, like you said at the beginning of the broadcast, when someone's called coach, the students, just like Coach Everly and Brown, guys that were my coaches, I could never call them by their first name. I never had. It's Al Brown. It's his real name. He was my high school coach. I've never called him out to his face because he's coach. He's highly respected. And that's the way this fraternity of mostly guys. Now, gals are certainly invited. We love the women. The women's sports are blowing up right now, which is awesome. I love that. I think it's the best thing that's happened in sports in a long time, in basketball in Indiana, and especially throughout the country. I think the guys are the guys that I coached against. So when we get together with the legends, we get together, there are people there that I remember coaching against. We tell stories. We remember the past and we talk about the present. and maybe what it's going to be like in the future. And it's a different language. It's just a whole nother way to relate. And it's nothing that I can relate to anything else other than maybe other core groups that talk about English in an English class or school, English teachers together. I'm sure they have their own fraternities, but coaching is special and it never leaves you. You're right.
Coach Worland, when you reflect back on the Dave Worland starting out Purdue, getting through in those 3 years, and whatever window of time it's been, 3 or 4 decades to where you are today with your career, what do you look today and tell that younger Dave Worland?
Yeah, if I went back to that younger Dave Worland, there would be thousands of suggestions I would give where that young Dave Worland messed up big time and he made some horrible mistakes. But then I'd say, but guess what? You made it through it. You're still going. You're still working, doing, influencing, leading, and all that. So even though, and I think that's one of the things I'll remember the most in my career, because I'm on the tail end of it. I'm still working full time, been working full time all the time, but I'm on the latter edge. I'm going to be 69 years old here this month. So I do see in the horizon things that I'll be able to do outside of that full-time job work that I love. I love the work, but I would tell those things to that younger Dave Worland. I don't think I'd change a thing because you got to have bumps and bruises and you got to have the pitfalls and you got to go through life. And some of them you can control. I remember, I'm going to fast forward a little bit, but when I was a high school coach at Washington Catholic, we were upset in a sectional game by Bar Reeve, who had beat Bar Reeve 30 points regular season. We got in the sectional and I got out-coached. And I got beat. I got beat. The players got robbed because their coach wasn't getting the job done. So I put the blame on me, but I survived it. It's like you would have thought it was the end of the world that night, but like the next day, let's get ready for the next year. And so I think you have to go through that learning process. You can't be preempted to say, hey, guess what? In 10 years, if you had a crystal ball, you better be more ready for that Bar Reeve game because guess what? Joe Toadrank over there has got your number, buddy. He's going to be able to figure it out. No, I needed to go through that because I was a better coach after that. And then we got a little better. So I think there's a lot of things. We don't have 3 days to talk about all those mistakes I made, but I remember them all and I'll keep them forever because I don't want to make another mistake, the same mistake. I'll make mistakes, but I learn from them and I'm a lifelong learner. I think as educators, we're always learning, but we got to remember what we did, and just because we did something that was successful doesn't mean it's going to be successful next time. We got to figure out a better way to do it sometimes to keep up with what's going on in the world.
Thank you for sharing that, Coach. As I'm listening, I'm reminded that probably the eminent leadership expert in the world today, Dr. John Maxwell, and his Change Your World program, clearly points out, look, life, leadership, it's all uphill. If we think it's anything but that, we're going to really struggle. And I think you just shared a great example of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think some of the things that as I mentor others, because there's people, I love it right here at Cathedral. I'm not coaching anymore and I don't miss the coaching at all. It's got past, it's a different, I watch on TV and I love it. I'm a big Purdue fan. I'm a big Cathedral basketball fan. But Jason Delaney, who is our boys head basketball coach, I coached him at Lafayette Central Catholic. And that's been a long time ago. But he and I have great stories about what we did as a player and a coach. And then I don't coach anymore, but I get it through him a lot of times because he'll come in and talk to me. He was just in here 20 minutes ago, wanting to talk to me about summer ball and all that kind of stuff. So I get my fix because I can still talk coaching, even though it's past me. But I learn because Jason will tell me some things. Here's my former student, my former athlete, who's educating me to let me know what's going on today. So I'm learning. I'm a lifelong learner and I'm willing to learn. I'm not stuck saying, oh no, we always got to play man to man, or we always got to play coach this way. No, we don't. We got other ways that we can learn.
Reflecting back, Coach, you mentioned women's basketball and women's sports in the state of Indiana, how much it's grown. And yeah, I heard you recently speak at the HBCA Annual All-Star Classic, and you talked a bit about in the early 1970s, the State Athletic Association in Indiana really didn't recognize sports. And I'm not pointing that out negatively. It was girls' athletic clubs, for example. And I remember that very clearly. It was around the mid-70s that the State Athletic Association started bringing girls' sports, women's sports in with the boys. And what a significant difference it's made in the past 50 years. But when you think about women, the growth of women's sports in the state of Indiana, and you look back about rules changes, et cetera, what jumps out most to you from when you first started out in athletics and education today versus then?
I think what jumps out at me is when I remember when in those 70s, I graduated in high school in 73, and baseball and basketball were the two sports I loved the most that I liked to play and all that. And I do remember so many guys during that time. There weren't so many gals, like I said, because they didn't have opportunities yet. Thank God they are now. But back then, we did it all. I was rare that only did two sports, but I had guys like Bobby Reilly and Mark Andrews. They played four different sports in a season. You don't see that so much today because it's specialized. I'm not saying it's good or bad or indifferent. It's just there are guys and now girls who would like to play other sports, but because the culture today says if you want to play at the next level, if you're a high schooler, you're going to have to pick out which sport. Because I can count 20 guys that I've known over the last 10 years that could have been excellent at all four sports and probably learned a lot and helped their teams, but they had to funnel that down to a single sport, whether it be football or basketball or baseball or tennis, or whatever it be. And so that's the sad part of it. I think is the good part is though, they were able to take their game to a higher level because competition today is a lot greater than it was back when I was in high school. The college level, even all that, there's a lot of great athletes back there, but the college athletes today are like unbelievably well schooled. The coaching is more upgraded. The facilities are top of the line. So that part's all good. I like that. But I do miss the fact that a lot of the guys just weren't able to get involved in other sports today like they did back when I was in high school.
Well said. And we can't go through the wrap up of this episode. And Coach Worland's agreed to come back again next week and continue our discussion, in particular next week, diving into more education and leadership in that in his experiences and things that he's seen and things he would recommend to help all of us. Coach, you mentioned being a grandparent, and I've had some really close friends in our men's Bible group that we get together recently become grandparents. And the one thing that I found in my grandchildren, the oldest will be 10 in just a week or two from this recording, and the youngest is 2.5. And there are just no words to properly describe it. It's just the most awesome, heartfelt feeling that God allows people, if we're fortunate to reach this maturation point in life, to just really gain and appreciate, right?
It is so true. What you just said, Kevin, is so true. And I never would have dreamed in 100 years what it would like to be a grandparent. Because I remember when I was younger, when I was on the fast pace and go do and all the stuff that we do as parents, raising children with a full-time job, it was like, okay, it's invested money when you were younger. Like people always tell me, hey, invest your money when you're in your 20s. I didn't invest anything because I said, that's too far away. I'm never going to retire. That's beyond the thing. It's the same way with the grandkids. Probably grandkids. I hope I'm blessed with grandkids, but I never even thought about it. But I thought it'd be like just the next level of raising your kid, but you don't really raise them. You're just there to love them and go with that. But it is totally different. I've been so fortunate because part of it is a little guilt on my part. I got to be honest. During my career, and my wife, thank God, she was a stay-at-home mom. She was the best mom I could ever hope we would have in our family. But thank God she was able to do that because a lot of times the three kids were asleep when dad left to go to school, and they were asleep when I got home from basketball practice. So I'm paying back now. I feel like it's probably that part of it is what I wasn't always, and I wasn't a deadbeat dad. It wasn't like I was mean or bad. It's just I wasn't as present as I can be now at times with my grandkids for my children. So that's an extra blessing for me because I can see in my own children that I can have total focus on those 6 grandkids whenever I can and love them and hold them and influence them and do all the things that I know is best for them. Not that I'm perfect, I'm not, but I do think I can get, with my experience being around for all these years, I can do some things that'll help what the parents are wanting to do to those kids.
Coach, I couldn't say it any better. Thank you for sharing that. And I can certainly relate That's one thing I think that's a bit different today, and in a very positive way. Coaches and educators today have maybe learned from our eras to where we sacrifice things like that, not realizing exactly the impact it would have later on. But I love the fact that today's generations have seen that, and many of them find ways to create a greater balance or connectivity there.
You are so true, Kevin, because I can tell you, I'll tell you firsthand, just over the last 2 months, my wife we just moved a couple of years ago to a little larger house, and our daughter is remodeling her house with her husband, Matt. So they asked us, can we stay at your place for a while the house is being remodeled because it's going to be all torn up? No problem. Come on down. We got extra bedrooms. Everything's cool and everything's fine. Now that they've been in for those, they're going on their month and a half now, and they're probably going to stay another month. What a blessing for us, because we love it. They're living with us. They didn't think we would want them there. Now, whenever they do leave in a month, we're going to be so sad because they built the culture. But here's what I've learned, just to your point that you said there, Kevin. I watch Matt and my daughter too, but mostly Matt, because I can relate to him because we're both males. Okay. My patience was not what his patience is raising the children. I would be frustrated at a time and I'd raise my voice. I'd stop the learning process. It's okay, Lance, I'm done. Guess what? You're going to bed or you're doing whatever. But Matt is a saint, because he'll take those two boys and they'll be fussy, just like my kids were fussy, but he'll give them options. Do you want the grapes or do you want the mayonnaise over here? Do you want this doll or you that doll? He gives them choices. He's brilliant. I didn't raise my children like he does because he has the tolerance and he gives them that love, and we all give him love, but his love is much longer standing because I was usually short-tempered and short time-wise. I didn't have time to go through all the answering 20 questions for my kiddos when they're younger, where he is just like staying on. So I have learned so much from him, just watching him in these month and a half that he's living with me. And I'll take that with me with the grandkids. My patience will be much broader. And if I have anything to mentor people about how to raise kids, I'm going to go with the model of my wife's husband and my wife, or my daughter's husband and my daughter, because they have been able to figure it out the best that I've seen.
Thank you for sharing. I can relate as well. But I tell you what, we're going to pick up right here next week, and we're going to talk just a bit more before we jump into people who've impacted Coach Worland and gained some advice. And we're going to ask him to share some lessons learned, like all of us who we've all stumbled in many different ways in our growth and maturation piece. Coach Worland, my friend, I love you, brother. God bless you for being here, and I look forward to continuing our discussion next week.
Absolutely. Been a thrill for me. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. Again, with Coach Dave Worland, I'm Kevin Smith, and Leadership Synergized. We just want to talk to people who've been there, done that, introduce them to you and myself, and let's learn from them in that piece. And I know I've taken away a lot of positive aspects from our discussion this week. And don't forget to join us next week. Have a great day. God bless.